I'm Tim Ogden, Managing Director of the Financial Access Initiative, a research center housed at NYU Wagner, and the leader of the Small Firm Diaries, a major new research initiative to better understand small firms in developing countries. The Small Firm Diaries project will follow more than 100 small firms, which we define as firms with 1 to 20 employees, I'll return to that definition a bit later, in 7 countries: Colombia, Nigeria, Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, Indonesia, and Fiji. The Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth provided early catalytic funding for the project, followed by investments from ANDE, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Argidius Foundation, and others. In this study, we'll be using a financial diaries methodology, similar to what we've done in well-known studies of households like Portfolios of the Poor and the US Financial Diaries. That involves visiting firms every week for a full year to gather data on all their financial flows and decisions, along with what we call modules, deeper dives into specific focus areas that combine quantitative and qualitative questions. The data we gather will provide insight into key questions about small firms that are very hard to answer reliably otherwise. The goal is to create actionable insights for practitioners who are trying to support small firms. As I mentioned earlier, we're following firms with 1 to 20 employees, which we call small firms, since there's so many different definitions of SME or MSME. We're following the size of firms because they're such an important part of the economies of developing countries, especially in terms of employment for low-income families. But more importantly, because as best we can tell from existing data, these firms rarely grow. First and foremost, we want to understand why. We're about 20 weeks into data collection in Ethiopia, about 12 weeks in Colombia, and a few weeks in Nigeria. We're currently recruiting firms in Kenya, with Uganda, Indonesia, and Fiji still to come. Today, I want to share with you a bit more about the firms that we're following and what we're going to be able to see in the data, starting with Colombia and Ethiopia. Hopefully that'll whet your appetite for what's to come. And of course, we'd love to hear from ANDE members about what questions you have about small firms and the challenges they face. In each country, our research team is interviewing firm owners in 3 to 4 sites. We're very interested in the specific challenges faced by women-owned firms, so we've made sure that they make up about 1/3 of the firms we're following. We've also focused on a few industries, light manufacturing, agro-processing, and services, where we think growth is more likely possible than in sectors like retail. To give you a better sense of the kinds of firms we're following, here's a look at their size in terms of revenue, value of assets, and number of employees. Now, these firms are in low-income neighborhoods, so unsurprisingly, they're clustered around the lower end of distributions, though the firms are a bit larger in terms of revenue in Colombia than Ethiopia. I do think it's worth noting that in our sample, the proportion of women-led firms at around 1/3 is fairly consistent across size, whether that's by revenue or number of employees. You can also see where the firms fall in terms of their depth of use of formal financial services. A much larger percentage of firms are unbanked in Colombia than in Ethiopia. We've also taken a look at the wages the firms pay their employees, with some context on income in those countries. Interestingly, we don't see that wage rates differ much by the number of employees a firm has. Now, during the course of the study, we're going to be able to track how these parameters change, how stable or volatile revenue is, employment, asset value. When those things change, what else is happening in the firm? What decisions are the owners making? Does growth in revenue come from increased productivity? And when it does, are gains passed on to employees, reinvested in the firm, or in the owner's household? As I mentioned, we're also going to be able to look at some key areas with quantitative and qualitative data. The first of our modules has just been completed in Ethiopia. It includes questions about financial management and record keeping. Here you can see some of the early analysis of that data on how firms track their finances. Specifically, one thing of note is how the firms perceive their own profitability. Of course, there's much, much more to come. Please do come to our expo session with any questions you have about the study. You can also follow the project at smallfirmdiaries.org and on Twitter and other social media. We really look forward to sharing this data that we gather from these firms and working with members of the ANDE community to better understand the barriers that small firms face and how we can design programs and policies to support those firms and help them grow. Thanks for your time and attention.